After playing The Vanishing of Ethan Carter in my last video, I began looking for other similar games. Whilst looking, I stumbled across this game, What Remains of Edith Finch, another short narrative driven game, and now, with this being my vibe, I decided to play it. Similar to most narrative driven games, this is described as a walking simulator, although I'm starting to dislike that term to describe games like these, and it is more than a walking simulator. It is a walking experience, which I much prefer. But anyway, unlike The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, I feel there is more of a designated path for you to follow, or at least some sort of guidance, even if it is subtle and there are no puzzles, or at least taxing puzzles, which is nice for a game like this because it allowed the developers to concentrate even more on the stories they are telling, which, by the way, they did an amazing job on. Now, how they tell the stories is a really good nod to the developers of this game. When you do start the game, you open a journal someone has written, and begin to read from there. The story is told through this journal, but as you are able to walk around, words flash up on the screen, which is a really cool way of doing it in my opinion, better than just someone speaking and having subtitles below. And the way the words pop up as you explore, it some way points you to the point of interest they are talking about, and Weird Me likes how they animated the words, especially when they disappear. As you reach the house and explore, you finally come to the first story of the family, and can see how the story of the game is going to be told. You are going to experience the family story of the Finches through a family tree, with each person's story being different, and how, sadly, they died or disappeared. I won't explain every single story, even though every single one is really interesting. I will, however, pick a few which I thought were 10 out of 10, and left a lasting impact on me, because this is what these types of games do. Through the amazing storytelling, they leave an impact on the player, or they did in my eyes. Interesting and thought-provoking stories would do that to people, and through the medium of video games, you can actually play these stories and experience them better than the movie or TV show, because you are controlling the character and living the story, rather than just watching on the sofa. Anyway, the first story you come across is Molly's stories. I will say I'm a bit biased on this story, mainly because I like cats, and you get to play as a cat. But as the first story of the game, it is really good. As I said, you firstly play as a cat chasing a bird. When you catch it, you become an owl hunting rabbits. As much as I have said I like playing as a cat, playing as an owl flying around in the snow, there is something really relaxing about doing that. You then become a shark, though you have to roll down a cliff, which was quite difficult in my opinion. Once in the ocean, you hunt seals, and like the owl, I really enjoyed swimming in the ocean. Once you catch the seal, you then become a monster, and the story becomes a bit darker. You are no longer hunting animals, but actual people, eventually making it back to your room as the monster hiding under your own bed, waiting for you to fall asleep so it can eat you. I will admit, I had to look up how Molly actually died, and it was through food poisoning. The story sort of tells you, through hunger by neglect of the mother not feeding Molly, Molly eats numerous things in her room, like gerbil food, toothpaste, and cherries, which eventually poisons her. And this theme continues throughout the game. You will be experiencing these family members' deaths, and how they all died in strange and unfortunate ways. The next story that I came across that stuck with me was Walter's story. Now, like most of the stories, to be honest, it is a sad story. Walter, after experiencing the death of his 3 siblings, Molly, Barbara and Calvin. With Barbara's death, however, Walter was hid under the bed while she was murdered, and he decided to hide away from the world through fear of what killed him. Experiencing that much heartbreak all through his childhood would affect anyone, and Walter dealt with it by going completely off the grid, living in the basement of the house, completely unknown to Edith. What makes the story so sad is that Walter had been living this isolated life his whole life, and finally came to realization at an old age that he didn't want to live like this anymore. He wasn't afraid anymore of what was out there. He wanted to leave, to experience life at its fullest, and not live the same day over and over. When he finally got the courage to walk out, he got hit by a train and died. It is so sad, because Walter finally got over his fear and was ready to experience the outside. He had so much hope. What I think is interesting is that the rumble you see in Walter's story at 12 is from the train going past, and the one day where it is slightly late is the day he chooses to go outside, the day he dies. The last story which I will talk about, and is easily one of my favourites, is Lewis's story. Once again, it is a sad story. It is about Edith's brother, who is struggling with mental health, partly down to when his little brother Milton went missing, and partly because of substance abuse. Edith says that after he graduated, he spent more and more time in his room, until he got a job at the cannery. After he got sober, his psychiatrist says that he soon realised that the life he was living was tedious. What I mean by that is that he spent his life in the cannery, chopping fish's head off over and over again. Whilst working, his mind began to wander, using his imagination to come up with fantasy stories, gradually becoming more and more detailed, creating a city and townspeople to live in it, and eventually a whole world where he visited other cities. It is hard not to get caught up in Lewis's story and his imagination, and if it's easy for us to get caught up in it, for Lewis, who was creating a story, I could see how he got caught up in this made up world, and how it became as real as the real world to him. This character he created became more and more important than anything in the real world. He wanted to escape to that world and not live in the real world where he was just a cannery worker and not a king. And sadly, this is what happens. Lewis is so caught up in his imagination that when he is going to be crowned king, he bends his head down to get crowned, and sadly he dies through a work accident. This story had an impact on me because I expect most people have felt the monotony of life, the waking up, going to work, coming home, eating dinner, and then doing it all again tomorrow. It is hard sometimes and easy to think that this is what life will be forever. And for Lewis, who had struggles with mental health and substance abuse, he got so caught up in the life in his head, he died because of it. These are only 3 stories which I have chosen out of possible 12, which resonated with me. But the benefit of this game is that every single story is so good that in reality they should all be mentioned and experienced, because as I have said before, this is what these types of games do. Through the amazing storytelling, they leave an impact on the player. Interesting and thought-provoking stories will do that to people. And like I said, through the medium of video games, you can actually play these stories and experience them better than a movie, because you are controlling a character and living a story. This video, if anything, is just a taster of how good this game is. And to those who have not played it yet, you have to play this game. For all the ones I mentioned, just to experience it yourself, and also the ones that I haven't mentioned.